Hey everyone. Hold on a sec.
Premature.
Hey everyone. Um, this is Jack down here at the Bolter Hole,
Brian.
and we're here for the Bolter Report, episode 3,
Wow, trio.
the
We,
trio.
we made it to 3.
We made it to 3,
Wow.
so pretty exciting. Today is July 1st, um, and we got a bunch of information over the last few days about a whole slew of things. So we'll talk a little bit about a lot. So let's we can kind of shift really quick and kind of talk about how we're gonna go. So hobby progress, ninth edition, Vigilus. We'll spend a bunch of time on the Vigilus campaign, and then we'll end with some hobby inspiration to set us on the path for the week. All right. So with that in mind, Brian, what did you do for hobby this week?
Guess what I was working on.
Skeletons.
Hey! Look at that. Yeah, so I got 10 more skeletons done.
Okay.
I actually used this as a benchmark. I'm like, I
Okay.
wanted 10, so I was like, oh, I'll get 10 more skeletons done. And I did.
Nice.
I'm waiting for the texture paint to dry right now. But
Okay.
I should finish their bases tonight. So yeah, and then more Warcry terrain, and then more skeletons, more Warcry terrain. And I'm hoping by the middle of July, hopefully before 9th edition comes out, I'll have the skeleton block done.
All right.
So, how about you?
Well, this was a pretty down week for hobby progress. I did I have been working on the Forge World armored assault thing.
The Praetor.
The Praetor assault launcher thing. I have hit a bunch of snags on it with a bunch of bending, a warpage on that. But as far as other hobby progress, I haven't. I had to take an MTEL, like a Massachusetts teacher test, and that took up a bunch of my time studying. I'm waiting for those results. Kind of hoping I took it out in one fell swoop.
Sure,
so
you're fine.
yeah, so we'll see how that all shakes out.
Are you trying to tell us that a large Forge World kit is warped and bent?
Yeah,
No.
I actually.
That happens?
Yeah, so I actually am thinking about doing a kind of Forge World tutorial.
That's a good idea.
So
Yeah.
simply because there is so much work that has to go into the Forge World process and the different tricks and tips that one can use to do that. So it's something that I'm kind of thinking about. And every time I'm boiling stuff on the stove and like
Yeah.
rebending it, my wife is like, "Why are you not taking pictures of this?" I'm
Do you do
like,
the hot water, or do you do the what do you call it?
It's not 6 feet, Mackenzie.
Hey, Mackenzie.
But we are both in the clear.
Keep banging.
So
I haven't seen Mackenzie in a while.
yeah.
That's how we greet each other.
Okay. Yeah, we haven't yeah, there's not been any yeah.
This is 6 feet in 40K terms.
It is. Yeah, very very true. So but so I've been thinking about doing that. Just
Yeah.
hobby. Anyway, so I haven't
cool.
done much this week at all. I did
Well, you
throw
had-
some
you had to do,
skin
like-
tones on 3 or 4 sisters.
MTELs are pretty serious, though.
Yeah,
So it's a good reason.
it is.
It's the 9th edition.
Whew, there's a lot of
Where do
information.
you want to start?
Well,
That's right, Mackenzie. She's awesome.
the
I miss our greeting. That was like our weekly thing because we always
Okay.
see each other on Friday. We haven't been able to do that. Mackenzie, I think it's been like what since the middle of March.
yeah,
So
it has been
when
since
times are back to normal, hopefully
Yep.
soon, right?
hopefully soon.
So 9th edition. Where do you want to start?
Well, I mean, there's been a dump of information about 9th. So we know that the big box is on the 25th and the pre-order for it starts on the 11th. We don't have a confirmation of the price. It's likely going to be around $200. There's no confirmation on that, but that's kind of where we're all planning.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. And and there'll be a bunch of stuff with it, like the Crusade Journal, the updated General's Handbook, the
Combat gauge.
Matt's. Hello, Matt.
Hey, Matt. What's up, Matt?
So combat gauge.
Let's not forget the combat gauge, Jack.
So let's jump into the combat gauge and talk about how the changes to.
Is it 5-inch combat gauge or is it a 3-inch?
So I think it's both. But I haven't seen the
It's
image.
probably 3x5.
Right.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
because coherency will be changing.
Should we start with that?
Let's start with that
'Cause
because
I think that's important.
it is. So if you don't know, in coherency is kind of how you have to keep your unit together on the battlefield in order to, keep it effective. And there have been a bunch of rules over the years about how that works, um, and I feel like they've never kind of gotten it right. So what has happened in the past in various games is you'd have this big long line of thing, and they'd like collapse over, like they'd take up a whole wing of the battlefield, and when uh, at its worst, I think that that sort of like daisy chaining
Mm-hmm.
would like, oh well, I'm holding three objectives with one unit.
Or really now more so with the force multipliers from
Yeah,
characters, right? So re-rolling and being within 6 inches of X character allows you to do
yeah,
whatever, and now pretty different, right?
yeah. So now like even they have a difference in kind of the horizontal on like one plane, like one level, like is 2 inches, but vertically, if you're in a building, it's 5 inches, and I think 5 inches is just so that you are able to stay in coherency between one floor and
With the
another.
larger buildings,
Yeah,
it's a much bigger difference I know
yeah,
compared to the older buildings, just because
yeah.
the scale of the buildings changed.
The scale of the buildings increased, and so I think they're
Right.
just max using that 5 inches to be like, if you're one floor above or one floor below, you're still in coherency,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. But there's also, you have to, if you have over
6+, I
six
think, right?
plus models, you have to keep coherency. We have to stay within 2 inches or of two models
Rather than one.
rather than one. And I
Right.
think what that prevents is that gigantic daisy chain. Now, the other thing that's important is if you do like decide to like, people have said like, oh well, you can just put two on the end of each squad and have a longer have
No,
a daisy
it's
chain.
every model.
Well, yeah, but every model's still within 2 inches of two people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except the ones on the end. So what that does, though, right? Because if you have like one
You
on
still
each
need two
side,
rows though, because you'd still have to be within. It's not gonna.
well, so people are saying you don't need two rows, but what happens when you start pulling from casualty?
That's
You'll
so.
you will end without you'll like if you take you won't have coherency then once you start pulling models. So it forces you to kind of have a double row style,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
I think that's important.
yeah, I mean, the way I read it was that every model needs to be within of two other models. Every
Well,
model, right?
well, every model has to be within
Right.
with two. So if you think about like so you if you have um, so
A single row, two guys on the side.
right. So and I'm just let me just show you what I'm doing here. So if you have like you could set it up like this. The problem is once people start casualtying,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you lose your coherency because the end model isn't there. And
Right,
once
right.
you lose coherency, there are penalties.
Yeah, did they reveal the penalties?
I don't think they did,
Because
but I think it's important that there are penalties.
so AOS 1, there was an issue. Do you remember? Did you ever see like the old? What's the guy's name? I forget his name. Anyway, he was one of the guys that won a bunch of tournaments at Warhammer World with a mixed order force before Cities of Sigmar became a battle tome,
Mm-hmm.
and he had like he's the one that used the Phoenixes and I forget his name. Anyway,
Yeah.
he won two final heats 2 years in a row. Really good player. But one of the things he did in AOS 1.0 was he'd have like a long line of max size state troops
Yeah.
and have a Luminarch in one side, a Standard Bearer in one side. So like there were all these characters or models giving out buffs to things nearby, and it was really bizarre because in 1.0, if you lost coherency, you couldn't move until you regained coherency.
Right.
So he would like purposefully take models out and then leave it stationary. So like models on the other side of the table would still be getting buffs from a unit that's part of their broken unit near another. It was the most bizarre thing.
Right.
And then they just kind of fixed it because if you're out of coherency, they just removed part of the unit till it was.
Yeah, I like that, and I'm kind of hoping they go that route a
I
little
think they
bit
will.
to force, because I think, I have mobs of orcs that are like 30, 30
What's
deep,
max size for orcs? Is 30.
30.
Wow.
And if you have 30 boys, it's really like to chain them out.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah.
it's a hassle. But I always have felt like you keep them clumped up because that's kind of how they would charge and attack. And occasionally your models get strung out just in like, oh, they're trying to move around a hill or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I just think this like means you have to plan your movement smarter.
Do you think it speeds the game up?
No.
You don't think so?
I think there are a lot of things they're doing that does speed the game up. I think
Mm-hmm.
when you add rules to movement, it always slows everything down.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that most things I've seen so far is to like make sure these tournaments can actually finish. You turn
Yeah.
on some of these games like LVO last year, and there was like a game that was like almost 3 hours long, and they didn't even get out of the second battle round.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even a lot of models. I'm like, okay, it was like
Yeah.
Death Watch versus something else.
Yeah, well, one of the things I like is how they've kind of shifted the table size a little bit. They shrank it down functionally to be, nobody can actually determine why 4x6
They
became a
still don't
thing.
know.
They
It's
still
like
don't
it's
know.
like the AdMac. They don't know.
Yeah, but I like that they've made that shift to a like basically like a kitchen table size. Like anyone can kitchen table it up.
How about the Combat Patrol, where you can just put together two kill team boards?
Yeah.
Perfect, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things, like a fancy board will be coming out, I believe, um with the release day, where you can like do a kind of combat patrol style. Um and then there's also there'll be a combat gauge type thing. So they also, I didn't actually get a chance to look at the Thousand Suns faction focus, but they talked about psychic powers, or the psychic phase.
So the warp charge, like we don't know. One of the warp charges I saw today was like a 4+,
Okay.
which made some people think, hey, is this going to be like 1d6 now instead of 2d6 for psychic power? Like, because 4+ is like almost an instant cast.
If it's only one die, it makes Sister's ability to psychically shield themselves super powerful.
I hope it's not 1d6, because I think that kind of like really limits the scope of what you can do with psychic powers in terms of charge. So I hope it's not.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting suggestion that I read. But well, I mean, all this is conjecture till we actually.
Yeah, because the Sisters can,
just through faith, right?
They through faith can block a psychic power, or basically if the psychic power goes off, it just has no effect. So, and it's on a D6, right? And if you use a miracle die and just be like, it's a 6, right? It's a 5. It's super powerful. And then there are characters or buffs that you can do that'll add 3 to it or add 1 to it. So, and you have the potential to have an army of Sisters that can miracle dice away, and not like all the time, but a huge chunk of it. You can really say, unless you're going against something like Thousand Suns, Zinch, or a very heavy psyker list, you can almost, like if you're going against orcs and your Sisters, you can be like, I'm not worried about these psychic powers at all.
I didn't realize some of the cool stuff. I'm getting distracted here, but I didn't realize that the Thousand Suns in the Ritual of the Damned got rules for the different the different circles. Yeah. So you could there's like unique psychic abilities. So if you want to be part of the Corvidae, you can have your army literally be like, so for those who read the Horus Heresy books, this is really cool. There's rules to represent the different circles of magic within the Thousand Suns.
Yeah,
which is pretty awesome.
And the Psychic Awakenings, and so in future weeks we're going to try to take on a few of the Psychic Awakening books as we go. But yeah, one of the great things about the Psychic Awakening books is that each of them, they have included factions for knights, chaos knights, and all of these smaller factions. Like the Pariah is going to have
there's a bunch, right?
Yeah, there's new Inquisition rules.
Assassins.
Assassins. Assassins.
No, they were the other
Engine War.
They were in Engine War.
Yeah. But
they were War of the Spider, I think. I can't remember now.
Oh, jeez, you're right. War of the Spider. They all kind of merged together. I read.
We'll get to that because
I read War of the Spider and Engine War on the same day, I mix things up in them all the time.
So we have the new coherency. I think is going to be big. The Combat Patrol games sound awesome.
Yep. I just totally hung up on the new campaign system, the Crusade system.
I really want to know what it is.
I do too.
I want to know what it is because if it's, we were talking about it last night, me and Dan. Path to Glory, not a huge fan of. Just because can you want 10 Arcanauts or do you want an Ironclad? Or it's do you want your White King to lead your force or do you want a Vampire Lord on Dragon? It's not it just seems haphazardly thrown together, honestly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping Crusade got more attention than Path to Glory because Path to Glory on paper sounds cool. And then you start looking how's this, So it sounds cool. Hopefully we get what we're expecting because everybody that you see, the playtesters, they all have good things to say about it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that they've done a great job, or I'm hoping that they have done a great job in taking. Um, they have this really great focus on the hard, like, real competitive elements of 40K, and that's awesome. They've done, looks like they've done a really great thing, like balancing missions and making you have dynamic choice in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that that same level of attention has been shifted into narrative, because I think that, you know, there are plenty of places out there that are competitive focused,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like a lot of the narrative stuff, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get into Vigilus, but a lot of that narrative stuff has been kind of left to, like, they put out missions and they have some cool stuff, but a lot of it's
Yeah.
left to players' devices. It's like, so if you're creating a narrative, it's like right now, if I want to create a narrative game or narrative campaign, I'm building it from the ground up with like a bunch of different rules from a bunch of different
Not a lot
books.
of, and here's the thing: like we're gonna get, this is gonna be really what we talk about Vigilance because I think it illustrates it. But like the, like you just said, like if you want to play narratively, I feel like AOS has gotten a lot more support for narrative play and like better design support. There's very few people I've talked to that play 40K that have even really played a narrative mission. Just very
Yeah,
few. They're like, and I was talking to a guy that plays a lot of AOS. He's like, oh, there's narrative play in 40K. Yeah, people do play it narratively.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, Crusade to me is if they hit it the right way, which literally every single person that's involved with it has said positive things about it, which makes me
yeah,
feel good. I mean, of course, they're gonna say positive things about it, but
right,
it sounds great. And even if it's not great, even if it's okay, we can always tweak it to make it great.
yeah. But having something like kind of assembled for you that you can tweak rather than building from scratch and grabbing from a bunch of different books is
How,
so much easier.
how many? I mean, how many narrative things have we designed? It's a lot of work, right? And
It
like,
is.
and sometimes it works, sometimes it sucks, but like
Yeah,
it's trial and error, right? So if they make something that's well designed and they're professionals, like that's what they do for a living, right? So I'm
yeah,
hoping it's pretty good. I'm excited,
yeah.
pretty excited.
So, with that, like, we can jump into Vigilus, because I think if you take a look at the Vigilus Defiant and Vigilus Ablaze,
Gonna start with Defiant.
yeah, I think what you're going to find is that they created a really unique and dynamic world, and the
Blew it
game,
up.
and well, yeah, no, it's like a crap, but
It's still there.
it's still there.
Spoiler. If you don't want to know what happens to Vigilance, I guess.
Yeah, spoilers coming forward. So Vigilus is, it really, they spent a lot of time crafting a really amazing world with some amazing rules, both like rules for new forces, rules for narrative gaming, and just like, you want to play a game on this world, awesome. Here's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of stuff you can use.
And they gave factions a reason to be there.
Yeah,
It wasn't just like, oh, there's orcs there. Oh, there's Dark Eldar there. Oh, there's. They actually made it fairly believable of why these. The only faction that wasn't there was Tyranids.
mm-hmm.
Genestealer Cult was there. Tyranids and Tau weren't there.
No.
I think everybody else was there
Yeah. So
for the most part.
so let's talk.
No Necrons.
Yeah, no Necrons.
Yeah.
But okay, Vigilus. What was Vigilus? So, at the end of 7th edition, the universe ripped in half. The Cicatrix Maledictum,
Maledictum.
right, ripped the galaxy in half.
Gork's Grin.
Gork's Grin, like, there are a lot of different names for it, but
Yeah.
functionally the warp ripped the universe in half. The Imperium, on one half of it that could still see the Astronomicon, the
Imperium
light from
Sanctus.
Imperium Sanctus, and
Yeah.
the other side was Imperium
Nihilus.
Nihilus, which couldn't actually see the light of the Astronomicon anymore. But even though the universe has been ripped in half, there were still a couple stable warp routes between them, and Vigilus sat on the dark part
Yeah, of the Nachman Gauntlet.
of
Yeah.
the Nachman Gauntlet.
Sanguitara was on the other side.
Yeah,
Right,
and
it's-
Sanguitera is likely where we'll end up at some point
So
in
they-
the next
yeah,
narrative
When
type
when
thing.
we get to the end of this, I want to talk about that a little bit because they left us hanging on a pretty big
Yeah.
thread with a pretty big reveal, and then
Yeah.
nothing's sense. So
Right, and so now Vigilus. Before we even get into these books, Vigilus was the setting for Wake the Dead,
Speed Freaks.
Tooth and Claw, and Speed Freaks.
Yep.
Building up to this thing. Now, the Vigilus is Vigilus Defiant. Sorry, is, so we land on this world, and this world is famous for its shield technology.
Mm-hmm.
So the cities, each city had a shield basically protecting each city.
Yep.
And that's cool, but the isolation of each city allowed different factions to come into play in each city. Um, but you had Genestealer Cult. You had now orcs landed and basically couldn't get through the shields.
Yeah.
So they just like ran around the whole like.
Had fun.
They just had fun, which is perfect for the orcs, and they were like driving around. And if you had to travel from one place to another, there was this amazing
highways.
short story. Like you had to like get away from. Like you had to time it in a way like where you weren't getting in the way of one of the speed wogs.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd get caught up in the and they would see you and just tear you to bits.
Did you read the lore behind the was it the warp jump? What's the DACA? It's the orc truck with a
Oh, the
shock jump. No. You know what I'm talking about.
I do the dragster.
It literally opens up a hole in the warp and it like teleports.
It jumps through.
But they made it to like be able to go through like the defense lines they had, so it could just teleport on the other side and keep racing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's pretty ridiculous.
It's awesome.
Yeah, the shock jump dragster, something like that. It's like
it's got a shock attack gun built in the back of it, basically. Yeah.
Super cool. So that said, so all the shield cities. Yeah. So not only did you have a ton of Imperial stuff, so you had Sisters, you had Admech.
Basically every faction's there.
Basically every. The only one that kind of felt shoehorned in was the Gellerpox infected, but like.
Were they there?
Briefly. So, but like you kind of have to shoehorn them in a little bit because it's what happens if
that's right. Lucia Vane shows up. That's right.
Yeah.
With the rogue trader from that box. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and so like, but that said, like the Gellerpox in general, it's what happens like potentially when like your Geller field fails and
nothing good.
And they're super cool.
Do you see how many pages of this was background? 114 pages.
Which is amazing. Just amazing.
So can
go ahead.
I was gonna say, can I just talk about like what I thought was like cool about this book and what I thought wasn't cool? So if you like background and lore, this is incredible. It kind of reminded me a lot of the old hardcovers for Fantasy Battle at the end times. They released those 5 big hardcovers.
Yep.
And there was one book of just background and one book of rules. The amount of effort that went into this was pretty impressive. The background and lore is great. So for hobby inspiration, there's a lot here, and it's just really, and it's a well told story. So you get that. Then you have the actual content, like the rules content. There's a full source for running a campaign on Vigilus, right? Mm-hmm. That actually goes thematically through the story up until because basically it's 2 halves, right? It's like the orcs and everything else up until chaos arrives, and then the second half is chaos arrives post chaos arrival, right?
Yep.
So this whole book is there's 3 phases to they call it the War of Beasts. There's all sorts of really cool rules for fighting on Vigilus, and there's some neat like random events tables you can roll on. The thing that like we tried a lot of some of these narrative missions, which I believe there are 12 of.
Yep.
Yeah, 12 narrative missions in here. I thought they were pretty fun. Sometimes when you're playing a game, I found that I don't know if you've run into this, but I found that playing a narrative mission with somebody you don't know can be difficult because of all the additional rules.
Right. And
it can slow the game down. Whereas if you know the person, you're playing with a friend, and you know each other pretty well, and like you don't mind taking your time, because sometimes you don't want to be the person. If you're doing a pickup game,
right?
You don't want to like take up more time than you need to if the player, I don't know, it's sort of etiquette. I feel like. But these missions, if you play with somebody you know, I think it's really fun. I just sometimes I feel like narrative play missions are a lot more involved than people realize, because having to remember all this stuff can actually be a lot.
Yeah.
But I thought it was pretty cool. Then they have the different rules for fighting in different parts of Vigilus.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like the battle zones, like Dust Storm and like.
There's one with like tectonic shifting, which is really cool. I think that might be in the other one. Yeah,
like Warquake.
Warquake, that's the one. Yeah, that was cool.
Geothermal eruption. Like
there's a lot of layers you can do, right?
Yeah, and then in addition to that, there are war zones, right? Like you're in a hive sprawl, you're in the waste, the Mega Borealis.
Those are similar to the realm rules. For AOS, right? You fight in the realm of fire. Although now I guess the new General's Handbook, you're not rolling a charge, just fixed rules, which I think is actually less confusing. Can we talk a little bit about the specialist attachments?
So this I thought was interesting because we moved really far from 7th edition into 8th with specialist attachments, but it was really unique, but I do feel like these specialist detachments maybe went a little too far.
Well, I mean, it seems like when I first saw them, I thought to myself, okay, these are cool, but they don't seem like game breaking. But then it seemed like everybody was using was it the Siegebreaker cohort?
Yeah.
That's the one that everybody and their uncle was using competitively.
Yep.
And I think that might have been it. I don't think anybody used it. I never saw another one. I'm sure some of these were being played, that people would pay more attention to it than I do. But I saw that one being used a lot. And these seemed like they weren't designed to be like super competitive.
Yeah.
Maybe they just missed a few rules when they designed that
Yeah.
Siegebreaker one. I don't know.
I think it was their attempt to kind of bring back detachments in a more balanced way, and I just don't think it.
Do we really need formations back though?
No, I don't think we do at all.
No, me neither.
But so one of the things, so this first book, and it sort of set the tone, I think, for what like players would expect from campaign books going forward.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're talking about a total page. I mean, this book is hefty.
Well, these two guys too. I forgot Marnius and Harkin.
Yeah, so we're talking a 200-page book, and you got like rules for orcs, gene stealer cults, or not rules, but like background and information, and all these imperial factions.
The art was really good too. Actually,
and,
that's another thing I really like. Their artwork, just like their when they do the world building,
Yeah.
they can make it really. If you like to build terrain, there's a lot of stuff to look at and get excited about and give you ideas.
And so in the first one, you got Harkin, World Claimer, and then you got Marnius Calgar, and then Vigilus Ablaze came through.
So the War of Nightmares.
Right, and so.
Can we talk a little bit about that story?
Which one?
The end of War of Nightmares, the way it ends.
Oh, good. So, well, let's get right
to the juicy part.
Let's summarize really quick. So, Space Marines. So, Vigilus is a pretty important spot.
Yeah.
So, Reboot Gilliman, the Primarch, sends Marnius, who has been recently primaricized, to go to Vigilus to hold it.
Take care of business.
He take care of business. Like here. And Marnius is kind of like, of course I'm going to, because like I have no actual value anymore. It's just a Primarch. And so
talk about getting like.
Oh yeah. And so you have, this. So he shows up and he like basically like he walks into a we didn't even mention this. He walks into a Senate hearing, and he basically like identifies like, oh, half of you are gene stealer cult, so he kills everyone.
Well, he establishes the Senate, right? It was a council that didn't do crap basically the whole time.
And so then, like at the very end of Vigilant Defiant, like there are all these people in the upper hives that have just been massacred, and turns out that Harkin World Claimer has showed up with his not Havocs, what do they call them? Raptors.
And
they're
Helldrakes are there too.
Helldrakes, and they're killing stuff up.
Yeah.
So then...
That was a cool story on the website where they had the Reavers, and they were like they were climbing up the spires. That was actually really cool.
And so you have... So then we get to, like, oh, by the way, Chaos is back.
Yeah.
We are giving you this new box called Shadow Spear. It has a whole bunch of Chaos Awesome in it.
Yeah, so the Chaos Legions that were there. Black Legion, Death Guard, World Eaters, Thousand Suns, Iron Warriors, Alpha Legion, Word Bearers, Night Lords. Those are just the legions, and then there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 renegades. And actually, we'll get to that, but they actually made rules for like new renegade chapters, which was
So like this was very chaos focused. Now we still had a super campaign system. We still had over like 107 pages worth of background and rules, and then you and then you get the War of Nightmares in a similar way, just like round by round, different cool stuff happening.
This had way more army updates though. This is effectively the Chaos 2.0 Codex update, and you got a bunch of new units in there. So you had the Lord Discordant, right? The new Havocs,
the new Abaddon,
new Abaddon, the Master of Executions, which for my money is a sneaky, awesome release. That model is really cool.
You got the Noctilith Crown.
Noctilith Crown too, right? And then
and you got rules for Dark Angels, Black Legion. You got
six different Renegade chapters too.
Renegade chapters with specific relics and traits.
If you're a Chaos player, Chaos Space Marine player, this is pretty cool.
This was super cool.
Yeah.
But, and all of those rules are awesome.
And more narrative play missions too. I think there's another 12.
Yep, and all the similar hive sprawls, just like now the missions are somewhat a little different, right?
Right. But 12 unique narrative play missions too.
Right.
Which was really cool.
Definitely, and I definitely was a big fan of the kind of the War of Nightmares sort of different, like, so there are 3 phases and 6 rounds in each phase that you could play through. In every part, like, something else is happening.
Mm-hmm.
But let's jump right back now. Like, now with that established,
Yeah.
How did, like, there was just some, like, there was some awesome stuff.
This is
and there was some
okay. Yeah, let's
like MacGuffin style, like.
So what was awesome? Because I thought it was really good. But
I thought it was really
good.
good.
They screwed the pooch at the end.
They totally did.
It was like season 8 Game of Thrones.
Yeah, yeah.
They brought in Benioff and Weiss.
Yeah,
you guys do the writing for the last 2 episodes, 3 or 4 episodes, and then.
And so.
It's basically what happened, right?
One of the things I loved is that they spent all of, like, there's this the writers have kind of this saying, kill your babies,
kill your darlings,
kill your darlings, and it's like, you spend all this time crafting this amazing thing, and then you don't hesitate to just rip it to bits.
George R. R. Martin.
Yeah. So like,
yeah.
So they like.
Should they have killed Calgar? I feel like they should have.
I feel honestly. Like they should have, but I feel like the way they left it. So Brian, summarize what happens here.
So like, some of the cool things is so basically Chaos is doing its thing. It's not looking good, and then the Eldar and the Imperials ally, which I think is awesome when they do.
Yeah.
So you see that like tension, but whenever it seems like things are really, really bad, the Eldar and the Imperium typically actually do work together for a very small amount of time, and when they do, it's like, oh wow, this is pretty cool.
So they set up they Calgar set a trap to draw Abaddon in.
There's a ship. They fill it with vortex munitions.
Right.
So Calgar basically draws in Abaddon. Abaddon teleports down, starts fighting Marneus, starts basically wiping the floor with Marneus. Yeah. As that's happening, he's about to kill Marneus, but he
literally cleaves his primary heart in 2.
He's got a second heart. He's okay.
Yeah.
As this is happening, the vengeful spirit is about to like be destroyed.
Yeah, and not only the vengeful spirit, like, so the Eldar and Imperium forces send a ship into the side of it. The vortex grenade,
right.
Munitions blow, and the vengeful spirit's like, I got to get out of here. The captain.
Yeah.
So he like contacts down to the surface and is like, hey, if you guys don't get back up here in like minutes, you're left behind. And so Abaddon basically like is like, I could spend 4 seconds and just finish you.
Nope.
No, I'm just gonna walk away.
Yeah.
And beam back. Now,
storytelling wise,
not good.
Cop out.
Big cop out. And
kill a character. It's okay if he has a new model.
Yeah.
They killed Drazar. Drazar's a brand new model. They kill him in the same book. It's okay. You can still use that model. Still use the rules. Huh?
Drazar's not dead.
Drazar's totally dead.
Drazar's not dead.
And they killed Jane Czar, but they brought her back. So you can kill Marty's Calgar could come back.
Well, he does because his second heart keeps him alive.
Like,
and we'll talk about in the first Psychic Awakening, the blood of the Phoenix. We'll address Brian's misconception about Drazar. But functionally, it's like when you do something like that, like you've spent all this great storytelling, storytelling and creating this really unique world, and all these great characters, and when you just like, I kicked your butt, but I'm not gonna I'm Chaos and I'm the biggest, baddest Chaos, but I'm not gonna take literally a second to wipe you out completely.
Yeah.
Excuse me, talking too much. I think you emasculate your character. Like you don't it's sort of, in my opinion, it's like when you unmask the villain at the end. Like I've always hated Darth Vader's unmasking because it's like, well, if there's always good in him, then you take away from all the accomplishments that Luke had as a hero. And I think when you make your bad guy walk away, you kind of take away his bad guyness a little bit.
Yeah, I think I just feel like it would have been a little more fulfilling with consequence, because it didn't feel like there was any consequence. Like Vigilus was saved, but it's reacted. I mean, other than the whole decision to not kill Marneus, I thought the storytelling was pretty good.
I did too. I mean, you have a world, and I have a like it's hard to destroy a world in the word, like
Unless you got a
even
Blackstone Fortress.
but even Cadia, like there's still like
Just,
battles happening around there. It's not like a destroyed
well,
world.
the
It's like
planet's gone, but the system itself is still
the system is there, but and the
right.
planet like it's been like fractured and like but
Not a
you
great place to be.
it's not a great place to be. The War of the Spider takes place there,
Yeah,
but the
I gotta read that.
like the world itself has like seen better days, but
There was closure though,
there was
which we
closure.
don't see in Psychic Awakening, which we'll get to.
Yeah, but at the very end, right?
Yeah,
The after it's like okay, so the Chaos Forces have been able to basically render the defenses around Vigilus moot, and they're able to push forward through the gauntlet, and they're moving closer to
Sanguitara.
yeah,
But that's being the very last line of that is it's there's a massive fleet approaching from the other side, led by the Planet Killer, which was Abaddon's big ship in the Gothic War.
yeah,
So anybody that played Battlefleet Gothic remembers that gigantic ship model with a
yeah,
huge basically a Planet Killer
yeah,
laser beam on it. So yeah, I think like the Vigilus books themselves are great.
yeah,
The storytelling was great till the end, but like it was what I thought I'd see from the Psychic Awakening.
yeah.
But we got zero closure. At least I only read the first 3 books of Psychic Awakening, and then I stopped
Um,
because I like reading the story. But it seemed like those are more really rules updates,
and they're good rules updates for most
which is good.
factions, but there were definitely some moments of the stories that each Psychic Awakening tells are like short, like very specific,
It's like,
like
6 pages, 8 pages.
yeah, you're looking at like
It's not a lot.
effectively like 3 or 4 double-sided pages
Yeah,
of information, whereas
1 book of this was probably more than the entire.
a series of yeah,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like when which is fine, but when you talk about this before it came out, they're talking about it's this huge galaxy spanning event and big reveals. It's like, oh wow, that's cool. And then like I read the first book and I was like,
yeah, and I think that
read the second book, I was like, I don't know. I was like, after the third book, I'm like, I'm good.
yeah, I think the problem is that it is Psychic Awakening was galaxy spanning. It did touch on every single
Touch on.
it touched on
that's
every
the
single faction, but it it wasn't a um it was a broad brush, whereas like after reading Vigilus, like after reading through
Yeah,
these books,
yeah, it was
you
deep.
were like, I can't wait to see what they do next.
Remember the campaign we were in? It was awesome.
Yeah,
We did a campaign based all around Mortwald, one of the
yeah,
city states, and it was really fun. We did.
yeah,
It was 8 weeks, and like the end, it was great. It was
yeah,
probably I think that was our best 40K narrative
yeah.
campaign we've done.
And we also remember when
Urban
Urban
Conquest.
Conquest came out.
Yep.
Like everyone was digging on that, and
It
it was
was fun.
super cool. But then it's like gave you very specific like ways to battle and fight over a city, and then but then you get to the Psychic Awakenings, and we'll go through the Psychic Awakenings over the next few weeks. They're not like they're cool stories. They're cool, but they're basically like if this is like it's not even I wouldn't even call them novellas. Like they are like short and sweet, and like it's like this is
But
the
it's
chapter
it,
of what's going on, moving on.
but it's not a story. It's literally like hey, this is what's happening. You want to know what happens? We've created an environment for you to play in. You can play in it, but there wasn't much of a storytelling
I
happening.
mean, and so, I think that they secret in so they have the story, and then to get the closure to the story, you have to read. There's always a tiny section at the end
Yeah,
of the book, at the end of the final mission, that kind of highlights and like kind of gets you thinking about what would have happened, right, or what did happen, like
right.
um oh like at the end of this like Gazkul like so and it's just so much, and I feel like more and more it became you know the whole like a little bit too afraid to remove characters.
They're
I
afraid of
was
killing.
hoping
They're afraid of killing characters
I,
off.
I was hoping that this would be Psychic Awakening, the time when we would see a lot of the characters either try to become Primaris and fail, or just like all these old metal characters that
Kill them
existed,
off.
especially in the Space Marine range, like kill them
Like
off.
all the Black Templars. Like
Yeah,
literally all of them. They're
yeah,
all right. They're all metal, I think.
yeah, and in the Faith and Fury book, not a lot of I think it was Faith and Fury. The
Yeah.
Black Templars didn't really
Corferin shows up.
Yeah, they didn't really accept the Primaris Marines. So functionally, if you're not taking in new Marines,
How'd that work out for that? Like when you tell that to say no to a custode, how does that usually work out?
yeah. So yeah, I mean, and so we'll talk about all of that in
Yeah.
time. I mean, we're at our 40-minute mark. We
Yeah.
always try to keep this at like 30, 35.
So,
But
so overall, if you had to say
Vigilus Ablaze is
one
definitely
to 10, 1 to 10.
Oh yeah, like I would go 10. I
Really?
mean, well, 9.5. I'm very disappointed in the ending, but I think otherwise this is like the best campaign that
So
they've done.
the only thing I'd say missing from it is like a hobby section.
Mm.
So I'd give it an 8. If it had a hobby section, give it a 9 or 10. But I think it's their best campaign supplement they've made
Yep.
for a period.
Absolutely.
So, last thing.
Okay, so last thing. So we wanted to talk about.
I had a suggestion.
Oh yes.
So basically, things that like make a suggestion for anybody looking for hobby inspiration. So things that you use for hobby inspiration. One thing that I use, I use music. So I listen to music. If I'm painting, I'll put on some music that I find inspirational for hobby. So like a lot of soundtracks, movie soundtracks, things like that. Or also audiobooks. I find those to be very inspirational for hobbying.
So the things that I embrace for hobbying, right now it's all like books and audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want, I've been reading a lot of Inquisitor and Sisters of Battle
cool.
books, and
that's cool.
And so I'm just totally like the Eisenhorn books were the Eisenhorn
I
books
never read
were,
those. I heard they were great.
they are, and the Eisenhorn gets a rules update in the Pariah book.
Oh, that's cool.
But also, I've been reading the Heresian War books, which is about like an Inquisitor Covenant, and they're fighting in the and it just like gives you so many like cool ideas of like the different weirdo stuff that goes on, and even the kind of like life of the day-to-day poor human in the worlds that of 40K. It's terrible. But so that's what kind of gets gets me going. I listened to the audiobook Mark of Faith, and I have to say I've never really had like an audio book that was just so powerful. The way it was read, like the book itself is terrific, but the reading of it was amazing.
So the best audiobook I've listened to recently in terms of reading was The Witcher.
Oh.
So the Witcher audiobooks, if you listen, they're on YouTube. The narrator does different voices for like every character. So it's incredible. And it's you can literally tell who it is just by the tone of the reader's voice.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read or listened to those books, I think I like it more than Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire. It's that good. It's it's long. There's 7 books really, but there's 6 total.
Yeah.
Great series. That and I'm listening to the Von Karstein trilogy right now.
Yeah.
I'm doing Skeletons and Undead. It's good. There's a guy on YouTube that just reads the books. They're old books. They're from like I think mid 90s.
Yeah.
But they're fun.
Yeah, and so for hobby inspiration, that's kind of like I poke around into various things, but I like the kind of anything that can get me into the like down and dirty like sump world, like Necromunda, like the
Mad Max would be good.
Yeah, like any of these things that are kind of like gritty and like
Judge Dredd would be
what's going on for basic humans. So any book that kind of touches on like the real weirdness that goes on, or the struggle of like, oh, they're pilgrims that came to this planet. They're literally like they're walking like from one place to another literally for like months. They don't like if they didn't bring enough food, they left it like they're done. If like they came to be healed because they were sick, but they're literally like thousands and hundreds of thousands of people in front of them going, it's just and so what happens to these people and how do they survive and where, and right now in the Covenant books they're at this monastery called the Last Candle, and it's just like all these pilgrims have flocked to it, but there's so many of them, like they're talking like billions of people, and it's like crowded into these sectors of the city, of the monastery city, and it's just really neat to hear about that.
I remember Dark Imperium, and that book actually inspired Dan to do his whole Primaris army.
Yeah.
With Call talking about remember this using the traitor genetic material, which I always thought was a brilliant idea if they like eventually did that, like had some sort of cool story where like Call did that, because knowing him, he probably already has.
Oh he probably already has them.
Has them on ice ready to go.
and like, so anything like that kind of gives you a little bit of
Yeah.
like a nudge in a specific direction. Like I've always, for instance, liked the idea of doing a Black Templars force,
Oh,
but in the theme
what's
of
that guy's name?
The
Oh, I forget his name.
um
I know the guy you're talking. The one in the
the
Rise of Terror.
Dragonlance books.
Sturm.
Sturm. Like
Yeah,
so, you
it's
have
cool.
the Knights of Solamnia,
Oh,
and like you
old
had
school
like
reference.
scouts as like so you had Knights of the Thorn, Knights of the Rose, and Knights of the Sword.
That's an old school reference right
Right.
there. Anybody
So
who's underrated book trilogy.
yeah, I mean that was the
It's
book
fun.
trilogy that started me on this path. Really, I mean that was
I think that was my first. So I remember reading that. I read those books right when I got into Warhammer, like the same time. It was like
Yeah.
it was like a magical time. It was like 1991. It's like all these.
Yeah.
It's like Super Nintendo came out.
yeah.
Infinity Gauntlet came out. Warhammer happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot.
Yeah.
So
Dating ourselves here.
yeah, yeah.
Should probably leave it at that. We're a little
We
over.
should. So we're at 45, 46 minutes. Thank you everyone for tuning in to episode 3 of the Bolter Report.
Yes.
And
It's been decided we're not the report.
no, we're
People spoke. They thought it was lame.
did they? Yeah.
So report.
So thank you everyone that tuned in. See us on iTunes,
Spotify?
YouTube, Spotify.
We're big time now.
Yeah. We had something like 30 downloads or something.
Really?
The last I checked. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So fun stuff.
good.
So, well everyone.
Next week we'll do. Oh, preview for next week. We'll do. Oh, by the way, what's the stuff behind you, Jack?
Oh, so yeah. So this weekend we have Pariah. We have Lord Inquisitor Kyria Draxus.
Yeah.
We have Ethereal Stern. And
Plenty of Zotes.
yeah, we have Zotes, and we have the new Necron Luminar.
That's a sweet model.
Saurus.
That is a disturbing skull.
Literally flensing flensing a human like apart.
That's a Astromith arm piece,
and
by the way.
can I just drop you a tiny bit of like this is a gigantic model,
It says
right?
the box. Yeah.
But he also, unlike Gazgul, who is also a gigantic model, he has the infantry keyword.
Huh.
So like Gaz can't go into
Gaz
it.
doesn't have an infantry keyword.
No, he's
He's
gigantic.
He's a dread.
He's a dreadnought. So so he's effectively.
So Psychic Awakening next week we'll start going over that.
Yep. So Psychic Awakening we'll start with, and we'll just go through them in order. It's not going to take a lot of time.
We'll have more ninth information too.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll have a price,
Hopefully
and
by
so I do know that I'll have a box for people to look at
Ooh.
on the 11th. So
Which
June 11th,
is
July 11th. Yeah,
a week from Saturday.
A week from Saturday, I should
Oh.
have a box in store,
And hopefully
so
we're
that
fa-
people can look at it. And
Hopefully
pick
we're
it.
in phase 3. We'll see.
Hopefully.
We'll find out.
So, but thank you everyone, and stay tuned for more information.
See you, everybody.
Bye.